Okay, so this is a video with the chain rule and trig functions. There's a couple others posted on Canvas, but I'm going to go through the ones that are on your doodle notes. So I kind of just took a screenshot of those if you want to fill those in. When we do trig functions with chain rule, I want you to remember PTA. And this helps me make sure I get all the parts of a trig function. So the P stands for the power. That's where we start. The T stands for the trig. And the A stands for the angle. And the nice thing about the trig ones is there's not a lot of algebra, but you do have to do a little bit more thinking with them. So again, PTA, power, trig, angle. So if I look at my first function, I have y equals the tangent cubed of x. So to find that derivative of tangent cubed, I start with the power. So my power is 3. So again, the power rule says that comes out front. So I have 3 tangent to the second power of x. So that's my first part. I did the power. So I brought the power in front, I decreased it by 1. That's the power rule. Now my second part is the trig function. So here we have to think of the trig function. We don't worry about the power anymore. The trig function that we're looking at is tangent. So the derivative of tangent is secant squared of x. And the only reason that the secant is squared is because that is the derivative of tangent, is secant squared. Then our last one, so we have power, trig, and now we need the derivative of the angle. My angle is x, so the derivative of that is 1. So if I write that all together, I would just get 3 tangent squared of x, secant squared of x. So again, I don't always like starting with this one because the secant is only squared because the tangent, the derivative of tangent is secant squared. So when we watch this next one, watch what happens when we do the trig part of it. All right, so this one says cosine squared of x cubed. So again, I want you to remember PTA, power, trig, angle. So if I want the derivative, I start with the power. So the power of this is 2 because the cosine is squared. So the 2 power comes in front. The 2 cosine, 2 minus 1 is 1. So the new power is 1, x cubed. So that was just the power. Now I need to multiply that by the derivative of the trig function. So the trig function is just cosine, not cosine squared. Squared is a power. So the derivative of cosine is negative sine of your angle. You have to keep your angle of x cubed. So we have power, trig. Now we need the derivative of the angle. The angle is x cubed. So the derivative of x cubed is 3x squared. And that's what it looks like unsimplified. If you simplify that a little bit, you just get negative 6x squared cosine of x cubed sine of x cubed. That's what that would look like. All right, so let's try another one. When I look at this one, this next one we're going to do you see right here where the 4x is in parentheses squared? So before we even take the derivative, let's change that to sine cubed. So 4 squared, that's 16x squared. So this is a different way to write my function. So now I'll do the derivative. The derivative of this starts with the power. My power is cube, because that's what sine is being cubed. So 3 sine squared of your angle, which is 16x squared, times, now we need the derivative of the trig function. So the trig function is sine, not sine squared, that's a power. So the trig function is just sine. So the derivative of sine is cosine, keep your angle, which is 16x squared. Then the last part, so we have power, trig, now we need the angle. The derivative of 16x squared is 32x. So this, if I simplify it, 32 times 3 is 96. Sine squared of 16x squared times the cosine squared, or times the cosine of 16x squared. That would be that. A couple things, because I've already met with the A-Day, a couple things that came up. So they had a question like y equals sine of 4x. So this does not have a power, so I keep saying we follow PTA. If there's no power, you just skip that part. So this doesn't have a power, so you could skip that. So you do the derivative of the trig function. So the derivative of sine would give you cosine of the angle, which is 4x, times, now you do the derivative of the angle. So the angle is 4x, the derivative of that is 4. And then you could rewrite that as 4, I don't know what's going on there, cosine of 4x. All right, let's just try one more just to kind of make sure you guys can get through your problems today. Let's see, our function is, how about this? The sine of the cosine of 4x. So again, this one does not have a power, but it is still kind of complex because you have an angle, you have a double angle. So the angle of sine is cosine of 4x. So you're going to have to do the chain rule a couple times here. So you still start on the outside. So start with the trig function. So the derivative of sine is cosine of that inside. That's that baby. We always say keep the baby. Now we have to multiply by the derivative of the inside. Well, the inside is another trig function. So what is the derivative now of cosine? So that would be negative sine of the angle. And then finally we get this last part. The derivative of 4x is 4. Another little shortcut that I always think of is wherever you would say the word of, you need a derivative. So the sine of the cosine of 4x. So I'd have that 3 times the sine of the cosine of 4x. Two ofs, 3 derivatives. How do you simplify this? Be careful simplifying this. Right here, this is not cosine squared because this has an angle of 4x. This does not. You could move the negative 4 out front, and then you could say the cosine of 4x times the sine of 4x. Okay, so you guys need to make sure you do the problems that are on Canvas for our chain rule with trig functions. I'm trying to get there to show you which ones to make sure you have done. So if I go to Canvas, there's a couple things I want to make sure you have done. So we did not meet the other day where it says trig functions right here. There's some other videos for you to look at. And here's the problems I'd like you to do with an answer key. And then when you're done with that, I would also like you to go to December 3rd and make sure you do this practice assignment, WebAssign chain rule with applications. Okay, and I will see you guys on Thursday.